Welcome to Dolphin Dive Daily, your go-to spot for everything Miami Dolphins. If you bleed aqua and orange, hit that subscribe button and join the pod. The NFL trade deadline always has a way of turning into a drama-filled stage, and this season is shaping up to be no different, especially if the Miami Dolphins end up being one of the more active teams in the market. According to reports from ESPN insiders Jeremy Fowler and Dan Graziano, two names are starting to gain traction as potential trade chips out of Miami: edge rusher Jaelan Phillips and running back Jalen Wright. And to make things even more chaotic, the Tyreek Hill rumor mill is firing up once again, as if the Dolphins needed more attention on their already fragile roster situation. When you put all of this together, what you see is a franchise standing at a very dangerous crossroads, trying to decide whether to push for contention with the core they have or pivot toward a restructuring that could reshape the team for years to come. Let's start with Jaelan Phillips, because his situation might be the most intriguing of them all. Phillips was a first-round pick back in 2021, and for a while, he looked like one of those rare edge rushers who could completely tilt the balance of a defense. Explosiveness, length, burst off the line, the kind of tools that make general managers salivate and offensive tackles lose sleep. But injuries have been his shadow since the very beginning. First, the ACL, then the Achilles. Now, in what should have been his prime breakout year, he looks slower, less confident, maybe even a step behind what he used to be. Through 3 games this season, the production hasn't been there, and it feels like Miami's front office is already calculating the risk of keeping him versus the potential reward of getting something back while they still can. Graziano's take was blunt but accurate. Phillips is in the final year of his rookie deal, and it's almost impossible to picture Miami handing him a long-term extension unless something drastic happens. The Dolphins could play the long game, let him walk, and hope for a compensatory pick down the road in the 2027 draft. But that's a gamble on patience and time that doesn't really align with the urgency this team is feeling. If a contender sees Phillips as a low-risk, high-reward rental, Miami might be able to cash in on a 2026 pick instead. That's immediate value. And for a front office that knows they're stuck in a weird in-between phase, flipping an uncertain asset now makes way too much sense. Sure, there's always the slim chance Phillips rediscovers his burst and forces Miami's hand into reconsidering. But if we're being realistic, this feels like the final act of his Dolphins career. Then we shift to Jalen Wright. And honestly, this one is frustrating for Dolphins fans because it speaks to how inconsistent Miami's draft strategy has been in recent years. Wright was supposed to be a spark, a new toy in the backfield who could bring speed and versatility to an offense already built on explosiveness. Miami even sacrificed future draft capital to move up in 2024 and grab him in the 4th round. But just a year later, it looks like that pick is teetering on the edge of being a wasted gamble. Wright barely saw the field as a rookie, and this season he's already fallen behind Ollie Gordon on the depth chart, leaving him as the 3rd option in a room dominated by Devon Achane's rise. Reports out of training camp and preseason weren't kind to Wright either. He looked hesitant, lacked the burst coaches expected, and didn't capitalize on opportunities when they came his way. At this point, it's not about talent, it's about fit and timing. Miami doesn't need another developmental project at running back, especially when they already have 2 young players who are thriving. If another team, say, the Kansas City Chiefs, is willing to make a call and send back a draft pick, the Dolphins almost have no choice but to answer. Kansas City's run game has been a weak spot for years now, and a player like Wright, who still has upside, could be worth the risk for them. For Miami, trading Wright would be less about giving up and more about reallocating resources where they truly need them. But of course, no Dolphins trade conversation is complete without bringing Tyreek Hill into the mix. This is where things get wild. Jeremy Fowler threw out the idea of the Steelers having at least a conversation about Hill if Miami were willing to listen. Just imagine that for a second. Tyreek Hill in black and gold, giving Kenny Pickett a legitimate game-breaking weapon, turning the Steelers' offense from conservative to explosive overnight. Pittsburgh has already dipped into Miami's roster in the past, and Mike Tomlin has never been shy about pulling the trigger on bold moves if it means elevating his team. On paper, it makes sense, but emotionally and practically, it's hard to see it happening. For starters, Hill is still the centerpiece of Miami's offense. He's the player defenses scheme around, the guy who can take a 5-yard slant and turn it into a 60-yard touchdown before the safeties even realize what's happening. Trading him would be like tearing out the heart of the Dolphins' offensive identity. And while Pittsburgh could absolutely use his services, Kansas City looms in the background as the more logical landing spot. Hill made his name with the Chiefs, and if there's ever a reunion brewing in the NFL, it's the idea of him going back to Patrick Mahomes and Andy Reid. The fit is perfect, the chemistry already proven, and you know Hill himself would love to end his career where it all started. Now, here's the real issue. What do these trade rumors say about the state of the Miami Dolphins as a whole? They're not whispers about depth players or fringe roster guys. We're talking about Phillips, a once promising first-round pass rusher, right? A player they just invested draft capital in. And Hill, the superstar face of the franchise. These are names that carry weight, names that, if moved, would send shockwaves through the league. It tells us Miami's front office is fully aware of the cracks forming in their foundation, and they might be ready to make some painful moves to prepare for the future. The Dolphins aren't in rebuild mode yet, but they're also not in all-in mode anymore. They're stuck in that dangerous middle ground, where keeping everything the same risks stagnation, but blowing it up risks alienating fans and wasting the prime years of other key players. This is where great front offices earn their reputation, by making the tough calls that hurt in the short term but pay off in the long run. If Phillips gets dealt for a mid-round pick, if Wright is shipped off for depth value, if even Hill becomes a real discussion, it means Miami is prioritizing sustainability over short-term flash. For Dolphins fans, though, it's a tough pill to swallow. This was supposed to be the era of fireworks, of an offense that could outrun anybody, of a defense anchored by young stars. Instead, it feels like every week brings more questions about who will still be here when the dust settles. The next few weeks leading up to the deadline will be critical, not just for the names being floated, but for the entire direction of the franchise. Are the Dolphins willing to sacrifice now to build a stronger tomorrow, or will they hold on to fading stars and risk being left behind in a loaded AFC? One thing's for sure, Miami has everyone's attention. Rival teams are circling, insiders are buzzing, and the trade deadline clock is ticking louder by the day. Whether it's Phillips, Wright, Hill, or someone else entirely, don't be surprised if the Dolphins become the epicenter of the NFL's next big trade story. And when that happens, the ripple effects will be felt far beyond Miami. Because moves like these don't just shift rosters, they reshape the balance of power across the league. Still with us? Then show some love. Hit that like button and let us know in the comments. What's your take on the Fins this week? Breaking news is swirling through the NFL like wildfire tonight. And if you're a Dolphins fan, or even if you're just someone who lives for off-season drama, you're going to want to sit down for this one. Rumors have emerged that TUA Tagovailoa, the young and talented quarterback who has been both the pride and frustration of Miami, has reportedly reached a breaking point with the coaching staff and is now allegedly demanding a trade. Yes, you heard that correctly. TUA Tagovailoa, the face of the Dolphins' future, is supposedly asking to be moved. The chatter began as whispers among insiders, but has since exploded across social media, with speculation ranging from locker room tension to disagreements over offensive schemes. The timing could not be more dramatic. Coming off a season that showed flashes of brilliance but was marred by inconsistency, injuries, and a sense that Tua hasn't been fully supported in the way a franchise quarterback needs to be. Sources close to the situation suggest that the friction between Tua and the Dolphins' head coach has reached a point where reconciliation seems unlikely, at least in the short term. Apparently, Tua feels constrained by the play calling and believes that his development is being hindered by the current system. The coach, on the other hand, has maintained publicly that he has full confidence in Tua, but insiders hint that private meetings may have been far less cordial. Some speculate that Tua's camp has been quietly exploring trade possibilities for months, carefully gauging the interest from other teams should the relationship with the Dolphins' leadership continue to deteriorate. While nothing is confirmed at this moment, the mere fact that such rumors are gaining traction has sent shockwaves through the NFL community. Adding fuel to the fire, there are reports that Tua has already made his intentions clear to team management. According to The Buzz, he wants a fresh start somewhere he feels his talents can be fully realized, a team that can build around him rather than limit him with rigid structures. The implications for the Dolphins are massive, not just in terms of roster decisions, but also financially, as Tua's contract and potential trade value make him one of the most significant assets in the league. If this were to materialize, Miami would suddenly face a high-stakes dilemma. Either persuade their young quarterback to stay and smooth over these reported disagreements, or risk losing him and potentially entering a rebuild with a quarterback void at the center of it all. Fans, of course, are divided. Some see Tua's alleged move as a bold step toward autonomy and a chance to play in a system that truly complements his skills, while others view it as impulsive or even damaging, questioning whether a trade request at this stage in his career could backfire. Social media is ablaze with hashtags, memes, and heated debates. Former players and analysts have begun weighing in, speculating which franchises could make sense as destinations. The Broncos, the Saints, and even a surprise look at the Jets have been tossed around in these speculative discussions, with each team offering a different potential narrative for Tua's career. One thing is certain. Any decision involving a quarterback of Tua's caliber would reshape not just the Dolphins, but the balance of power in the AFC for years to come. Complicating matters further are the intricacies of the Dolphins' current roster. Trading Tua would likely require a blockbuster package in return, including first-round draft picks or key young players. Executives around the league are reportedly monitoring the situation closely, understanding that even the hint of a Tua trade could set off a chain reaction that affects multiple teams. Rival quarterbacks could find themselves in new environments, teams could restructure salary caps, and draft strategies could pivot entirely based on what Miami decides to do next. The ripple effects of such a move are massive, and insiders suggest that even casual fans might not yet fully grasp the full scope of the consequences if this rumor becomes reality. Some sources hint that the tension goes beyond XS and OS. It's also about leadership and locker room dynamics. Tua, while charismatic and widely respected, has apparently clashed with certain veteran players and staff over approaches to practice, preparation, and team culture. These conflicts are being described as a slow burn, simmering over the course of the season rather than erupting in a single dramatic moment. Yet, according to the whispers, the breaking point has finally been reached, with Tua allegedly feeling that his voice is not being heard at the highest levels of decision-making. This narrative paints a picture of a quarterback caught between his aspirations and the realities of a franchise that has spent years trying to find the perfect balance between talent acquisition and leadership stability. Rumors also suggest that Tua's camp is positioning this potential trade as an opportunity for Miami to rethink its long-term strategy. They reportedly believe that if the Dolphins truly value him, they will make substantial concessions to retain him, whether that involves revamping the offensive playbook, giving him greater input on personnel decisions, or surrounding him with more reliable weapons. Conversely, if the front office decides to entertain trade offers seriously, Tua could be on the move sooner than anyone expects, making the upcoming weeks an incredibly intense period for both insiders and fans alike. Every press conference, tweet, or cryptic quote from team executives could now be dissected for hidden meaning, fueling endless speculation across podcasts, YouTube channels, and sports talk radio. It's worth noting that this isn't entirely unprecedented in the NFL. Quarterbacks requesting trades is a storyline that has erupted in the past, sometimes leading to dramatic shifts in league dynamics. What makes Tua's situation particularly compelling is the combination of his youth, potential, and the seeming volatility of the Dolphins' locker room environment. Analysts are comparing this to past blockbuster scenarios, where franchise quarterbacks made public or semi-public moves to assert control over their career trajectory. The stakes are high, and the drama is undeniable. Fans are now left to wonder whether this is a negotiation tactic, an emotional response, or a genuine desire to start over elsewhere. The truth might be somewhere in between, but the buzz is real, and it's not going away anytime soon. Meanwhile, the broader implications for the NFL are enormous. Should Tua indeed be traded, the ripple effect will impact playoff projections, free agency decisions, and even future draft plans across multiple conferences. Teams in need of a quarterback will suddenly have a tantalizing option, while others may accelerate their own search for stability at the position. For Miami, the franchise is facing a critical juncture. Act decisively to resolve the tension with Tua or risk letting a potential superstar slip through their fingers. The next steps will be closely watched, and every insider leak, cryptic social media post, or management statement will be scrutinized for clues as to how this high-stakes drama will unfold. In conclusion, the rumor that Tua Tagovailoa has broken with the Dolphins head coach and is asking for a trade has ignited a firestorm of speculation, debate, and intense fan emotion. Whether this turns out to be a temporary flare-up, a negotiation tactic, or the beginning of a seismic shift in the NFL, the narrative is already captivating millions of people who follow the league. The coming weeks could very well redefine the Dolphins' trajectory, reshape Tua's career, and create one of the most talked-about stories in recent NFL history. For now, the whispers continue, the social media chatter grows louder, and the sports world waits with bated breath for the next twist in what may become an unforgettable offseason saga. This is exactly the kind of rumor that can dominate headlines, fuel endless discussion, and leave fans across the country eagerly wondering what's real and what's speculation. The Tua Tagovailoa trade saga, if it indeed is one, is far from over, and the drama is only getting started. That's a wrap for today's dive. If you're loving the content, share it with a fellow Dolphins fan, hit subscribe, and turn on notifications so you never miss a splash. Fins up.